Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the fifth episode where I rate your Four Guys creative maps. If you want to know what are the rating criteria, please take a look at the video description as I have now added them over there instead of reminding what are the criteria each and every single episode. With that, let's move on to the first map for this episode. So our first map for today is titled Desert Descent. Let us see what the map has in store for us. And at first glance, I think from the thumbnail, most of you have already seen that this is a desert-like map and perhaps some indications of a oasis. So directly there are actually two paths. However, I do strongly recommend people to take the path that has the scaling blocks rather than the path of the boom blasters, because there are a couple of instances where the boom blasters might not be strong enough for less experienced players to make use of them. So regardless, I will catch up with all of you once I've reached the scaling block section. So upon reaching the scaling block section, the most things that whether newer beans or the casual beans would have to do is just to dive onto the blocks and grab onto them, and that's about all I can really say for this map itself. Then reaching this next area, we're going to bounce ourselves into the next area. Do be careful of the punching box that appears over here as indicated by the sticker. And next incoming would be the boom blaster itself. You can make use of some camera cuts to tell when you should be moving away from the boom blasters. And even though there are checkpoints right before the boom blaster itself, I am not certain whether there's a respawn zone literally placed should players be unfortunate be blasted off the map, because it would mean that they have to restart the map from the very beginning, which can be rather irritating. Then now we have what I will call the elevator, where players would actually have to press themselves upon the conveyor belt and jump so that the force of the conveyor belt can propel them to the next section. And then once again, there's a second one, albeit a lot shorter. Then lastly, it's just a slide right down to the finish line. So rather than showing you what are my thoughts summarized for this maps onwards, I will be quickly showing the first and foremost rating and the thoughts of it as the evidence, as most of the time I have indeed realized that my thoughts are just the basis on how I rate the maps themselves. So for this first map, I'll be giving it a rating of 7.65. And for those who are interested as to why I really rated it, if you have realized that this is indeed a short map, and based on my additional timings of myself as I were to clear the map, and I found that for the more experienced beans, they will obviously take a lesser time to clear the map, so you are looking at around 2 to 3 minutes for it. Whereas for the rookie beans that are perhaps newer to the scene, or even just casual beans themselves, you are perhaps actually looking at around 3 to 4 minutes for them to clear the map. and that is despite the various paths that are present, the difficulty that the map itself can contain. But regardless, let us actually move to the second map for this particular episode. Our second map for today is titled Galactic Varieties. So directly from a first glance itself, I would say that the map is rather short and simple. However, I think that newer players might struggle on certain parts, which I will show each of y'all as I've reached the areas accordingly. So the first area itself is this punching glove. For newer players, they will not think that they will need to stand right next to the punching glove in order to get the maximum effect from it. And second thing I will have to say is that this ball power up over here is, I think, just for the show, because there is a hoop up there for people to so-called roll through, but I would think that there is not much of an issue even if players do not make use of it, as they can also simply dive through. Other than that, I would say that the map is still easy enough to navigate through. One thing I would think of having an improvement is that perhaps add a checkpoint on this particular area as well as the other yellow platform that you can see in the far distance, as it would really mean that players would just have to restart one area, which is this blizzard fan, to the finish line, rather than restarting the area should something bad happens, like where I did not get the jump before being blown by the fan, which means that I do not have enough air time to reach the finish line. So directly, let us move to the rating that I have for this map. And for this map, I have chosen to give it a 6.75 out of 10 because of a few factors. First of which is, from what I mentioned, the punching gloves as well as the final fan section. If players fail, even though they will not be sent back by a very huge amount, but for certain players who are less skilled and less willing to think about such issues, they will really not want to keep trying the same section over and over again if they just cannot understand what was the reason why they did not get to qualify or not move on to the next section, whichever else that is also possible as a good reason that they are unable to really figure some parts out. But regardless, analyzing the map itself, again, I will feel that this is a short map, and regardless of skill level and whether players struggle in the punching gloves and the final blizzard fan area, I still think that based on estimated time itself, it still is around 2 to 3 minutes for them to be able to qualify. And the thing about why certain maps will get a higher rating than others is really because of the amount of aesthetics that are present. At least with the first map, there is like a desert-like background, that is completely separate from the skybox, whereas this map itself, the only decoration that is so-called holding it together is the space theme skybox, and the obstacles themselves do not really have much creativity to them when it comes to how things are placed, and it's just a simple obstacle course. But regardless, that is all I have to say for this map, and let's move on to the third map for this episode. So our third map for today is titled Beach, guys, and directly itself, it looks like we are supposed to be in a beach with some obstacles to navigate through. So instantaneously, the bridge staircase is easy to climb up, but as players navigate through them, I would say that they have to be cautious of the broken bridge or broken steps, whichever way you would want to call them. Then as they navigate through the platforms themselves, they have to be careful of the spinning bars. So this punching gloves area itself, as long as you stay on the right end of it, there is not much of an issue. Same as for the left side, just take the left edge of it. And let's take the slide down into the ocean, as the only thing I have to say about this river section is, why are there soccer balls inside the ocean? And for some even curious things like bananas, oranges, blueberries, and all other things that shouldn't exactly belong on the beach, and there is a golden egg. But regardless, my official thoughts and ratings for this map will be a 9.45 out of 10, because as I've ran through all the different things that I look at, the gameplay itself is just a simple obstacle course, and this map I would say is more of a type of hangout map that is more for a little bit of casual friendly setup as well, and it also gives us an experience as what would Fall Guys be, the beans themselves be doing should they not have the weakness to water, which is what this map is showing us. And directly itself, that is something that is harder to think of, because for most players, as they know that the moment you hit the slime or you hit the water, you are instantly eliminated. But this brings that second type of experience to each and every single bean. And directly itself, for the thoughts, again, this is a relatively short map. I did place the estimated amount of time to clear at about 2 to 3 minutes for every single skill level bean, but I feel that for obviously the speedy beans out there and who knows how to play through the game, I would assume that they will take much shorter time in order to clear this. Other than that, I do not have really much negative things to say about this map other than the cannons blasting all sorts of nonsense into the ocean. Are we aiming for an ocean pollution here? That is all I have to say for this map, and we shall move on to the next map. Our fourth map for today is titled as Even Huger Fans, which I think from the title most of you players can already see that there are basically lots of fan blade obstacles that are in the map. So instantly you will notice that I chose to take a path that is less common, and instantly the creator has placed a respawn zone. I was considering that how much I am struggling with this map because of how this particular section is orchestrated by the creator. I will see you guys once I actually reach the next section with the hexagon tiles. Now that I have reached past to the hexagon tiles area, you would have noticed that the hexagon tiles are actually disappearing based on a set timer and do not instantly disappear as my beam touches them, which I feel that is a friendly touch for the players themselves. But the next part, the big fence area, is and can rather be tricky for the newer beams, as they have to navigate this huge fan blade in order to come to this conveyor belt. And I would say the distance covered is a little too much while still avoiding the larger hammers. And for those who are wondering how do you progress from here, just be able to touch the wormhole over there and you will be teleported to the checkpoint itself, and we have the next more irritating section, which is more towards the final half. So this section alone, I have quite a number of issues with it, because if you are not able to land on the fan blades, you will be a respawn. And really, I think players would not appreciate that at all, especially for the more casual players, as sometimes aiming the angle, even despite the newer physics, can be relatively complicated. And regardless, just to quickly speak of the last part of the map, upon reaching the drum area and sliding yourself and walking through the hexagon tiles, your next job is to navigate the fan blades into the size of the tick itself, as the remaining part of the finish line is actually barricaded by a respawn zone, and that is not how a map should really be. And really, when I take a look at such gameplay itself, it is rather irritating for most players as how they are created this way, because respawn zones should be used sparingly for more of the things that say cover the finish line, and to have respawn zones right before the finish line itself because you cannot play hole in the wall for using a beam is rather, for a lack of words, I will have to say bad, because players want to be able to qualify and not respawn mysteriously and retrying a section for absolutely zero reason. But regardless, or a map rating, I'll be giving this a 6.5 out of 10. Running through the map itself, I would say that this map is of medium difficulty. The estimated time with me having a stopwatch timing is, most players would probably need a full time length of 5 minutes. Of course, that is from my estimation, as I had a timer with me, and perhaps the map length may even be 6 minutes. But regardless, I think that the amount of respawn zones in this map is a little bit too overwhelming, and who's not to say that the clouds area can be used as an alternative path for players, especially for more of the extreme left side and the extreme right side, for them to get onto the second potential path in order to reach the final fan blade area, as that is still your ultimate goal in order to reach the finish line. But regardless, we are moving on to our final map for this episode. Alright, so our last map for today is titled the Pumpkin Patch. So I do not have really much to say about this map, because the map itself has a lot of pumpkins, really, per se. Based on the map title itself, I would not be too surprised. Before we move on to a secret obstacle or a secret tool that we can actually use, I would assume that if players are more noticeable, there is a pressure plate that is over here, and I am not too understanding on what this pressure plate actually does, which I actually eventually assume that it is for another part of the map that we have yet to move on to yet. But moving back, we will attempt to grab the egg that is inside of a pumpkin for some unknown reason. And regardless, considering of how much time I am spending to struggle to grab the egg in particular, I will catch each and every one of you once I've grabbed the egg and reached the pressure plate area. So now that I have actually retrieved the egg, and obviously for players you have noticed that the egg is supposed to go inside here and it will activate the pressure plate indefinitely. And we shall move on to the next entire section of the map, where I would say that there's a little bit more cause for concern, as there is a lot of potential error spots. As basically players will have to make use of the speed boost and jump onto the first obstacle or first green platform, and perhaps even the second as well. Clearing that particular section, I ran into an interesting thing where apparently players are actually able to land on the pumpkins, which I'm not certain whether that was meant to be the scenario. But however, the last area is rather complicated, as you have to navigate up a tree house, maybe. I'm not sure what this be called, but for players who are simply trying to figure out how this map works, is that once you have reached certain areas, you have to grab a particular block that will actually turn on a fan, and you have to make use of the fan to actually hit the button that you have noticed on the tomb in order to get the access to the finish line, which I will try and show you where's the location of the fan. If not, if I do run out of time while attempting this, I will straight away move on to my rating and my thoughts for this map. So unfortunately, I was unable to show where was the fan and the end finish line is, but as I'm sure some of you might have figured out when I was showing the map itself, the finish line is located underneath the beam barrier that is actually obscured by the button. And there is actually a pressure plate on top where you have to make use of a block to activate the fan in order for you to even come anywhere close to hitting the particular button in order to qualify. But regardless, uh my rating for this map would be a solid 0.5 out of 10. So as for my thoughts as to why this rating was given, it was because of the fact that this map itself is of a medium map length with quite a number of challenging obstacles inside, and time frame to really clear this map, I would say, is around 4 to 5 minutes for the rookies, and maybe add around an extra minute for the less experienced ones. But regardless, that is really all I have to say, other than the fact that this map is really infested with pumpkins. I guess Halloween has come early, I suppose. Maybe not. I am I will leave all of you to decide on whether what is to be the scenario. So 5 maps have been ran through in this episode. I would say that most of these maps are actually more on the better side of things, rather than some of the maps being a little bit more underwhelming, whether we in terms of aesthetics or other different parts. And coming shortly would actually be the 6th episode, so do look forward to it, as I think in it we might have our first real challenge map, rather than some maps that are just added for a little bit added sprinkling of difficulty. Until then, please enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are from.